Today I'm ranking the albums by Black Label Society. I will be including the new one, Engines of Demolition, and I will not include any live albums, EPs, or albums under the Zakk Wylde name. I just have 12 studio albums. I will be doing it in a worst to best format. So with that being said, let me get into it. Coming in number 12 is Doom Crew Incorporated, the 11th studio album. It was released on November 26, 2021. This was the first Black Label Society album that I reviewed on my channel. I thought in general a lot of songs leaned more towards that Black Sabbath influence. There are heavy and sludgy tracks like Set You Free and End of Days. I could hear the Black Sabbath influence on tracks like Forsaken, Gospel of Lies, and Gather All My Sins. There are 3 ballads, mostly around piano, not very memorable, as he has written better ones. There's a ballad version of Love Rain Down, one of the heaviest tracks from Stronger Than Death. That was a good song. It has the original lyrics, but has a different melody, and Zakk delivers some very soulful vocals. It's still a pretty good ballad, although a little long. Overall, it's not a bad album, but it lacks some memorability. It's kind of average compared to the others. Let me also say these albums are hard to rank. They're not any bad albums, but something has to come in last, and it's going to be this one. Coming in number 11 is Hangover Music Volume 6, the 5th studio album, released April 20, 2004. This album is much more laid back. It could be compared to the Zakk Wylde solo albums, Book of Shadows, and that first one came out in 1996. The album contains a piano version of Procol Harum's 1967 #1 song, A Whiter Shade of Pale, and a song entitled Lane, written in memory of Lane Staley of Alice in Chains. The album opens with some acoustic guitar on Crazy or High, which reminded me of Alice in Chains again. There's also Queen of Sorrow, which was more of a southern rock track with some of Zakk's signature heavy riffs. There's Stepping Stone, another laid-back rocker with a catchy chorus, and a softer ballad called Yesterday, Today, Tomorrow. There's also an instrumental that's played on the acoustic, and it kind of sounds like an acoustic version of Van Halen's Eruption, and a piano-based track called The Damage Is Done. Overall, a much more laid-back album, sounded much more like a Zakk Wylde solo album. Still not too bad. I only have it ranked here because it's an album you have to be in the mood for. Coming in number 10 is Order of the Black, released on August 10th, 2010 through E1 Entertainment. There was a 4-year gap between albums, which was the biggest at the time. Zakk also released Black Rain with Ozzy 3 years prior, so that also caused a delay, I assume. The album has a big production, and it was released at a time when albums were sounding very loud. You know, the Loudness Wars and all that. It has a few great tracks like Crazy Horse. It has a classic Black Label Society sound. There's more of that Black Sabbath influence on the track Overlord, and some tracks that sound like they could have been on the classic Ozzy albums, such as Parade of the Dead. There are also the heavy tracks you would expect from this band, such as Southern Dissolution, Black Sunday, War of Heaven, and Riders of the Damned. And there are some tracks that are close to thrash metal, like Godspeed Hellhound. I read one review of the Metal Archives, which said it reminded them of Avenged Sevenfold, which I could hear a little bit during the interlude vocals in the middle section, but otherwise, Order of the Black also contains 4 ballads, 3 of which are piano-driven. A standout is Darkest Days that has that dark Book of Shadows sound. Overall, not too bad, a good mid-tier album. Coming in number 9 is the new album, Engines of Demolition. It's kind of impressive that he found the time to make another Black Label Society album, considering he's been doing a lot recently. He's been playing with Pantera. He did a few tracks with Ozzy for Patient Number 9, and he released a Zakk Sabbath album at some point, and this one's pretty good. I went back to listen to it again in preparation for this, and as a few standout tracks, the opener, Name in Blood, is a pure hard rock track with finger picking, and it gets heavier as it progresses. The song was the lead single, and it's catchy and energetic. There was also the hard rocker called Pedal to the Floor. That's a solid track. The Hand of Tomorrow's Grave was a masterclass in groove, and the song presents a sludgy soundscape that may be among the heaviest in the band's catalog. There's some classic doom metal, features a prominent wah-wah guitar solo, and there are a few of his obligatory ballads, such as Better Days and Wiser Times, featuring acoustic guitars and vocal harmonies. That song has elements of southern rock and country and lyrics that encourage the listener to let go of past hurts. And finally, the Ozzy tribute, Ozzy song. But overall, pretty good album. Coming in number 8 is Grimmest Hits, the 10th studio album. The album was released on January 19, 2018. I also listened to it when it came out. Despite its title, the album is not a greatest hits album. Zakk Wylde admitted in an interview with the Billboard that he just wanted to confuse people. Opening track, Trampled Down Below, a very classic sounding Black Label Society song. The Betrayal has some classic sounding guitar riffs by Zakk Wylde. The Only Words in the Day, That Heaven Had Gone, had this southern rock vibe. It reminded me of Leonard Skinner. Illusions of Peace and Ruined Nightmares were heavy tracks with a classic sludge sound. A Love Unreal starts off with acoustic guitars, but it sounds more classic later on. And then there were 3 tracks that reminded me of Black Sabbath. They were called All That Won't Shine, Disbelief, and Seasons of Falter. This is actually a very good later day album. That's why I have it ranked here. So check this one out if you never did. Coming in number 7 is Catacombs of the Black Vatican from 2014. This album was also released 4 years after the previous one. The album was released in the UK on April 7, 2014, and the US on April 8th. It's the only Black Label Society album to feature former Breaking Benjamin drummer Chad Saliga, after fill-in Mike Frogage departed from the band. Frogage himself replaced Will Hunt, who in turn replaced longtime drummer Craig Newmaker in the span of fewer than 2 years. So they replaced a lot of drummers. I think it's the first Black Label Society that I ever listened to, because when I went back to revisit it, it sounded very familiar to me. The opening track is Fields of Unforgiveness, which kind of has this very grungy Alice in Chains type of sound. There was also My Dying Time, which had more of a mid-paced and sludgier sound. There's some pretty good ballads like Angel of Mercy, which was a memorable song. They have some heavy tracks such as Heart of Darkness. I also like the acoustic track called Scars, which has some very memorable and emotional lyrics. You can also hear some classic Zakk Wylde guitar riffs, most notably on the track Damn the Flood. Overall, a very good later day album. Coming in number 6 is Shot to Hell, the 7th studio album released September 12, 2006. The band's first record released by Roadrunner Records. I had a few people in the comments say that didn't like this album. It might sound a little more polished, but I actually like it. I think it's still not very bad. That's why I have it ranked here. The opener, Concrete Jungle, is a mid-paced rocker. They get a little heavier on Black Mass Reverence. Then there's Blacked Out World, which is a little more psychedelic. And ballads like The Last Goodbye, which is a pretty good song. And there were 2 songs reminding me of Ozzy Osbourne type songs that had these No More Tears vibes, such as Give Yourself to Me and Hell is High. There were a few ballads such as Nothing's the Same, New Religion, and Sick of It All, and a few heavy tracks as well, Faith is Blind, and a few others. And I also liked Blood is Thicker Than Water, even though it kind of reminded me of the Foo Fighters. I don't know, I think some fans might not like this album, but there were a few more ballads other than the typical, it kind of had more ballads than usual, that's what I'm trying to say, and a few more mid-paced tracks. But in the end, the album's not as heavy as some of the others, but I liked it, so not too bad. It's ranked right here at number 6. Okay, getting into the top 5, these are like 5 killer albums that are almost interchangeable. But coming in number 5 is Sonic Brew, the debut studio album, released on October 28, 1998 in Japan and May 4th, 1999 in the United States by Spitfire Records. It's a solid debut album. There's a lot of variety here. There's an album opener, Bored to Tears, which is a good example of the band's sound with big and heavy guitar riffs. Some songs go a little into grunge territory with the clean verse, heavy chorus formula, such as the track The Rose Petal Garden. And there's some stoner rock here with Hey You, Batch of Lies. There's also some Black Sabbath influence on Born to Lose and Peddlers of Death. And some of the heavier tracks are Mother Mary, Low Down, and World of Trouble. And one standout ballad, Spoken the Wheel. And some pressings have a re-recorded version of No More Tears, but overall, solid debut. Coming in number 4 is Stronger Than Death, the 2nd studio album released in Japan on March 7, 2000, with 11 tracks in a blood red jewel case, and later released outside Japan almost a month and a half later with 10 tracks in a clear jewel case. The album shifted the band towards a heavier, more aggressive metal sound. They lost some of that southern rock and acoustic elements found on the debut. And the album opens with 2 heavy tracks called All For You, which has this almost bread fan type of guitar riff, and the sludgy, almost Rob Zombie sounding Phony Smiles and Fake Hellos. There are also some Sabbath-esque tracks such as 13 Years of Grief and Love Rain Down, and there are a few songs that are on more the melancholic side, similar to the Book of Shadows style, which are Rust and Killing Time. And there's some very unexpected guests on the album, such as New York Mets catcher Mike Piazza, who provides vocals on Stronger Than Death, and Mark Wahlberg, who plays bass in the music video for Counterfeit God. Overall, another solid album. Coming in number 3 is Mafia, the 6th studio album released on March 8, 2005 by Artemis Records, one of the band's most commercially successful releases, selling over 250,000 copies in the United States. The track In This River was written before the death of Zakk Wylde's friend and fellow guitarist, Dimebag Darrell, but it has since been dedicated to him. It's one of the softer ballads on the album. In 2005, the album was ranked number 15 on the Billboard album chart. It's another well-rounded album. The opener is called Fire It Up, which has some heavy riffs and stands out. It could have been on an Ozzy album. I hear more of a groove metal sound on this album in general, especially on tracks like What's in You and Suicide Messiah. There's also Forever Down, which starts with piano and then starts to sound like Ozzy Osbourne, like that type of track. And then there's some heavy stuff like You Must Be Blind and Say What You Will. I also like the psychedelic and stoner sound of Too Tough to Die. But overall, this one could have been number 1 or number 2, but it's really good. Like these top 3 are really close. So it leaves me with the top 2, which I'm going to do it together and then I will reveal where they rank at the end. But 1919 Eternal and the Blessed Hellride, those are the top 2 spots. So I'll tell you where I ranked them next. But first, 1919 Eternal, their studio album released March 5th, 2002, written for Zakk Wylde's father. This one has Bleed For Me, it's supposedly originally written for Ozzy's album Down to Earth, has Christian Ware on drums, and features a churning low-tuned riff and rhythmic intensity, became a blueprint for the Black Label Society sound. There's Lords of Destruction, one of the more aggressive thrash-influenced track on the record. It moves at a faster pace and really a heavy song, and it has some great double bass drumming from Craig Newmaker. And Robert Trujillo plays on a few tracks such as Life, Birth, Blood Doom, and Demise of Sanity. There are a few ballads such as Bridge to Cross and Lost Heaven, and has some Black Sabbath influence on tracks like Genocide Junkies and Mass Murder Machine. The album closes with a unique, bluesy, heavily distorted instrumental version of America the Beautiful, a tribute to Zakk's father and his country, played with his signature Zakk Wylde style. Overall, one of the most well-rounded and complete albums. And let me also talk about The Blessed Hellride, released on April 22nd, 2003, through the Spitfire label. This album opens with Stoned and Drunk, a high-octane opener, sets the tone for a classic Zakk Wylde riff, heavy, groovy, loaded with pinch harmonics. Lyrics are straightforward, capturing the gritty, rebellious lifestyle that defines the Black Label Society brand. There's also Doomsday Jesus, featuring a driving rhythm and a massive sludge-filled riff. The song highlights Zakk's signature chicken-picking guitar technique during the solo and served as a prime example of the band's ability to blend southern rock swagger with heavy metal weight. And there's Stillborn, which is famous for featuring the vocals of Ozzy Osbourne, actually backing vocals. It's more melodic, more radio-friendly than other tracks, but it has that dark, brooding atmosphere. And the title track shifts the energy significantly. It's haunting, mid-tempo, and uses acoustic layers and more soulful vocal delivery. It demonstrates that the album isn't just about volume, it is about atmosphere and vibe. And there's also Blackened Waters. This brings back that southern rock influence, featuring a bluesy swagger and a very hook-heavy chorus. The guitar solo here is particularly notable for its technical precision and emotional phrasing. Overall, solid album. So my final ranking will be The Blessed Hellride, number 2, 1919 Eternal at number 1. If you want to check out my full review of the new album, it should be appearing on the screen right now. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Please like the video. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you're not already. I do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.